MLS Aces Podcast, episode 245. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and we have again our third daily show, making sure we go through every single MLS team, all 29 of them, all leading up until the 2023 MLS season. We've had two successful days so far. Episode 1, 2 days ago, we had RSL, New England, and LAFC. Yesterday, we had Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. We covered all the Canadian teams. I've tried to stick to a theme, and I don't think the themes are going to work anymore. So in today's episode, I took two Western Conference teams and an Eastern Conference team. We have the Seattle Sounders, Portland Timbers, and FC Cincinnati. Three of the most exciting teams in MLS. Three teams who have a lot of storylines around them. I'm not going to talk too much here in the beginning because I want to get right into the conversations, right into the episodes. Just want to give my love and give my thanks to the guests and the experts that I had on to talk about all three of those teams. For the Seattle Sounders, I had Jackson Feltz come on. Obviously, he's out there big in the Seattle Sounders scene, talking about the Sounders weekly on their podcast, doing the pre and post game shows, everything like that. For the Portland Timbers, they're state rival, conference rival, whatever you want to call it. I had Sam Svilar on, obviously covering everything through Stumptown Footy and SB Nation and all that stuff. I kind of touched on the SB Nation stuff more with Sam as well towards the end of that conversation. And obviously, again, I'll say it here, support local soccer coverage, support local soccer, support it all. If you guys know these SB Nation folks and you want to follow more of their work, a lot of them are coming together and doing independent stuff now. Follow them, support them, listen to their stuff, read their stuff, all that fun stuff. So Sam, thank you for coming on talking Portland. And then the last one, FC Cincinnati. I had to have my Cincy boys on, Nathan Hale, Stephen Buckeridge from the You Ain't Lying podcast. They came on, talked Cincinnati with me, and it was a ton of fun. Outside of that, guys, not a ton of news. We're going to keep up with these daily episodes. I hope you guys enjoy these three conversations, and stay tuned for another episode tomorrow. MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and we're back with another kind of team recap heading into the 2023 season. Don't have an official title for it, but it is what it is. Today, we're talking Seattle Sounders, and who else would I want to have on except for Jackson Feltz? Jackson Feltz, you're the host of the Sounders Weekly and also the host for the Sounders pregame and postgame shows. So, I mean, you know everything Seattle Sounders, so thank you for coming on and talking with me.
It's a pleasure, Tom. Good to be here.
Well, the Seattle Sounders are maybe the most interesting team to talk about when you look back at what 2022 held and how the start of 2023 is going to be for them, right? Obviously, as far as MLS terms, down year for them, missing the playoffs, finishing 11th in the Western Conference at 41 points, but first ever team to win CONCACAF Champions League. I want to kind of start with that point and how maybe that mentality is, as obviously, now they're prepping to be the first ever MLS team to represent MLS in the FIFA Club World Cup. So where's the club standpoint as far as, I guess, what last season ended and how they're moving forward to 2023 now?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's a determination. It's a mindset right now of, unfinished business from the MLS campaign, not having made the playoffs, but determination to make a couple statements this year, to make a statement that, we belong on the world stage. Right now you're going into a Club World Cup where you're going to either face Auckland City, or you're going to be facing Al Ali, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's been a few different guesses here, but I think that, that is a storied club. And you look at the amount of trophies that they've won and what they've done in the Club World Cup. I mean, third place runs, 2 consecutive times. And I think for the Sounders, if you are facing them in the first game on February 4th, be competitive in that game. Show that you belong. Win if you can. Don't just, go out like Liga MX teams, have lost to them in the past, and show that you belong on the world stage and hopefully win. And God, if you can get to a semifinal game against Real Madrid in the Club World Cup, I mean, I've been talking about, just with people around here, and it'll certainly be on the first Sounders Weekly show of the year, the concept of what's the mountaintop for a Major League Soccer club? What is the furthest that a club can get? And the reality is that as much as we want to believe, well, you never know. Again, if you play 90, if you play 100 times, you might lose 99 of them. Can be that one. The reality is that if you're facing a Real Madrid or a winner from South America in the semifinal of the Club World Cup, that's probably going to be the mountaintop of any MLS club, at least for the foreseeable future. So if the Sounders can reach that this year, it would just be something else. So it's the determination to get to that game and show that you belong on the world stage. And then in league, it's the determination of last year was a hiccup. Last year was we won CONCACAF, and not getting the playoffs was as much of a product of that as it was anything else. The various injuries, etc. So it's a determination to get back to the playoffs and show the rest of MLS that last year was just a tiny little hiccup, and we are still the big dog in this league. We are still the team that was the best team of the last 10 years, of the last decade. And get back to the dominance that saw this team go to 4 MLS Cups in 5 years. So the mindset is determination on multiple different fronts to start the year.
And obviously, to do that, to have a good showing in the Club World Cup, to have a good showing in MLS regular season action, US Open Cup, the League's Cup play, everything that's going to be going on for the Seattle Sounders in 2023, depth, talent, health, all required, right? And they did that by locking down the long-term extensions of Jordan Morris and Christian Roldan. I mean, the fan base has to be absolutely ecstatic to have, these two hometown guys locked in for the good foreseeable future.
Massively. I mean, just to see them make that commitment. And obviously there was what happened with Jordan Morris with Swansea last year. And I mean, Jordan Morris, I know as reporters, we're not supposed to have favorite players or anything, but as a Seattle native who's from here, and I'm as much of a, I say this all the time on my show, I'm as much as a fan as anything else. I just I'm a guy in the radio business who was such a fan of this team, who wanted to kind of start reporting on them, and that just kind of blossomed into where I am now. And I'm a massive fan. Jordan Morris is probably my favorite athlete for the concept of this. What he does for the community with kids with diabetes, and the mentality of Jordan to, yes, he has this massive dream to go play in the English Premier League, and he could have done it with Swansea, and if he had stayed healthy, maybe they get promoted, and he has that chance in the EPL, and you just feel absolutely gutted for him, and it broke my heart when he went down with that ACL there with Swansea, because it was, it sort of signaled like, wow, well, yeah, so he's going to return to Seattle.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to prove in 2022 that he is still a dominant player. And he was still good. I'm not sure if he was great last year, but he was good. And then to make this commitment here, to say, listen, I had my chance. I went over. I played with Swansea. It didn't work out. Everything has a plan. There's that line, etc. But at this point in my career and where I am, understanding, where I am in my playing power, I can make this commitment, and I can say that I will be in Seattle for 5 more years. And really, this sets both he and Christian Roldan, because Christian Roldan, a similar case, University of Washington drafted, and he had opportunities as well to go abroad. But he also, both of them, making this 5-year commitment. But really, inside of this 5-year commitment, what it does is it sets them both up to be lifers, and for two great friends, who have really followed, mirrored each other in a number of ways. Both of them now are set up to be lifelong Seattle Sounders FC players. And that's something special. I mean, we think back to the great Sounders of all time, and that list is long. I mean, even Stephen Fry, Ozzie Alonso, Nicholas Ladero, none of them have spent their entire careers in Rave Green.
Yeah.
And these two guys are now set up to do that. And it's unbelievable. I mean, if they do it, both of them, and they obviously, after these 5 years, there may be a smaller contract after that, but if they do that, I mean, we're talking about a situation where they could have statues built of them.
I mean, right? Because like you just said, it makes it even more special that they are, lifers with the team. And Ozzy Alonso, a Ladero, a Fry, like you said, they haven't been their entire career with Seattle, but it just makes it even more special that Jordan Morris, Christian Rodon, they're local guys coming up. However, they got to the team, they got to the first team, and they're going to spend their entire time there. And it's going to be key for 2023, if you ask me, to have Jordan Morris more time removed from injury, have him getting back to the high level that he was at only a few years ago.
Yep.
Christian Roldan continuing to play at his high level. You got a Joao Paulo back from an injury last year. Him maybe getting back to a high level where he was playing in 2021. Let's start with Joao Paulo, because when you mix him with an Albert Rusnak, with a Nico Ladero, that midfield just honestly just sounds like one of the best in Major League Soccer, if not the best. What are these three guys, if you have them as your, plug and play starting three midfielders, how do you feel like they can help Seattle get to what they're looking for in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think you nailed it. And I mean that three can really turn into a five,
Yeah.
and frankly, you can push that to six with the guy off the bench, which I'll mention in a minute. But I mean, really, this five midfield room where you're going to have Jordan on one wing, and then Nicolas Ladero in the middle. You're holding Joao Paulo, and then you have Christian Roldan and Albert Rusnak that can flip between the right wing and whoever's next to Joao Paulo, and it's this five-some that, I mean, when they are healthy, and that really is the key, you're absolutely right. When they are healthy, I don't think there is a better five-some midfield in the entire league. The problem is they haven't been healthy altogether. And, and when one guy is out, what you do, and what we saw is Obed Vargas. That's the name, the young kid from Alaska who's really come onto the scene so strong. And he unfortunately was injured for much of last season. But when you have, five of those six guys healthy, which unfortunately they weren't last year, when you have those five, I mean, it's ridiculously hard, because you have the speed with Morris, you have the technical ability and the vision and the leadership and the expertise of Ladero. You have, I think that both Rusnak and Roldan give you different things off of that right wing.
Mhm.
Roldan really came on. I mean, he led CONCACAF Champions League last year in assists.
Mhm.
He really has a dynamic, foot that he can serve balls in with, in different kinds of ways, and he also has vision to, make different kinds of runs. And then Joao Paulo is. I mean, he's the motor of this team. If there's one player that will make the Sounders go in 2023, and the motor that wasn't there in
Yeah.
2022, probably the number one reason, if we're to, I mean, we're talking about a pie with many different slices here, but if there is one slice that's slightly larger than the rest last year, it is not having Joao Paulo, who was an MVP candidate in 2021, and he's the motor that makes everything go. He shifts it from the back line to the front to those attacking three, to Rui Diaz, and he even joins the attack sometimes as well. And having a healthy Joao Paulo makes the whole thing work, because he's the one that has the vision to dish to whoever that upline is, and either whether it's him going or staying next to Rusnak or Roldan, and the other staying or going. I mean, it really is Joao Paulo's show, and all of them work so well off of him. So yeah, I mean, the key to 2023 will be a healthy, rejuvenated Joao Paulo leading that five-some in the midfield.
And then obviously with all the minutes, all the competitions going on, you mentioned one name, Obed Vargas, coming off the bench, the homegrown, one of the most talented youngsters in CONCACAF. He's going to probably be expected to play a lot of minutes. Josh Atencio, Daniel Leyva, and a ton of other homegrowns that have been called up to the Sounders first team. But all of these guys, they're not maybe finishing the ball the same rate that we've seen in the past of Raul Rui Diaz sitting up top. You have him back. I'm expecting him to be back fully healthy as well. I know he had some injury, issues last year. You bring in an A Bear from NYCFC as what's presumed in my brain as the backup striker role, and you still have a club legend in Freddie Montero in that striker room as well. A ton of goal scoring potential, I think, in this striker just pool that you guys have going on with a ton of competition.
Yeah, there is a ton. I think Bear is a massive acquisition for this team. He is a very, very interesting, and we're seeing good things already, but a very interesting player in the sense of look at what he did when he was healthy with NYC. I mean, he was a dynamic player. And we really only got kicked out of his spot because another great player came in. So
Yeah.
he's an addition that I think he is a Bruin replacement, Will Bruin, who's departed, but then he's a replacement plus some more. Very technical, and I think one of the things with Bear is that he is a much better like for like replacement for Raul Ruidiaz. So when Raul misses some matches, which undoubtedly he will one way or another, and knock on wood, there aren't that many games. Knock on wood, there's no games lost due to injury. Bear is a much similar player to Raul than Will Bruin was. And that allows you to keep that consistency. So if you can stay consistent in the midfield and you can get the five guys, if you miss one, okay, but if you can get that fivesome in the midfield on a given day, and if Bear happens to be in there instead of Raul, the game plan doesn't need to change that much. The strategy and the way that this team functions doesn't need to change. You just slot, a Raul Ruidiaz light in there, and just keep rocking and rolling. So that is a massive, really smart acquisition by new general manager Craig Weibel for him to go find a player like that at I think a fair price. I think a very, very fair price, as long as Bear stays healthy, and when he's healthy, he's worth that much. And now you have a much easier system for Brian Schmetzer to use, where he doesn't have to change that much when Raul was out.
100% right. And coming from an NYCFC fan, I hope you guys take care of him. That's all I have to say. I love Bear, and he just brings also just energy and positivity and fun off the field as well. So I will definitely say that. Jackson, let's finish things up talking Sounders by just talking about this defense really quick, because I think if you look left to right, even adding in a goalkeeper, you're looking at one of the best, most talented defenses in the league in Anuhu, Yamar, Xavier Arriaga, Alex Roldan, Jackson Reagan, who stepped up huge last year as well. And then obviously, someone we mentioned before, Stephen Fry in net. This defense, I think, with another year under their belts, with maybe now Anuhu having some World Cup experience, with just, I think, maybe the longer break needed by not making the playoffs as well, getting some health underneath their legs. I think this defense really has the potential to shape up to be much better than where they were last year.
I completely agree. And I mean, really, you're looking at four spots where there's one small weakness. I'll get to that, but the strength is so obviously there with Yamar leading that back line, and really Stephen Fry leads the back line, but Yamar as your gigantic center back, the Chad Marshall replacement that we've been looking for a few years, Nuhu's just dynamic as hell, and as long at that left back spot, as long as he doesn't get too high up the field and then lose defensive responsibilities, because so many times we've seen Nuhu just completely lose himself, and it's frustrating because it's like, dude, you're such a dynamic, incredible player, but you gotta stay home sometimes. And sometimes, right, exactly. Sometimes he did get much better. I mean, every year he's gotten better on the offensive end. Little by little, he's gotten better. And so I shouldn't say that he just needs to stay back, because he shouldn't just stay back. But
you got to pick and choose.
He's such an incredible defensive player that you want to highlight those skills, and you want to definitely make those skills shine brightest. So it's about Nuhu's ability to transition and be really good at both ends. You have Alex Roldan on the right side, who I'll continue to say he's the most underrated fullback in MLS. He was a former midfield player with Seattle University, and he played under one of our broadcasters for Sounders games, Peter Fewing, and Pete used him as an attacking midfielder, and that's what he came into MLS as, an attacking midfielder. And we kind of, I think he understood, and I think the team understood. Nah, you're not an MLS quality attacking midfield player. So they shifted him to the back line, to right back, and right wing back, I should say, at first, and he's blossomed. And he's now just an outstanding right back because he can get up the field and do exactly what Schmetzer wants to do, swing balls in. And he's really, really good defender. I think he's a very underrated one-on-one defender, Alex Roldan. He has good pace. So you have, two excellent pieces. You have a good piece in Alex Roldan, a really good piece in Alex Roldan. And then it's that other center back spot. And that really is kind of the one question mark on that back line. Because Javier Arriaga, he had his best year that he's had in Seattle last year, but I still think they would love to get more out of Arriaga at that spot. And you saw a lot more time from Jackson Reagan. He nearly took the starting spot, did Jackson Reagan last year, but he got 2 yellow cards within about 2 minutes at the end of one half, at the start of the second half during the Portland game, and Jackson Reagan kind of couldn't recover from that last year. Arriaga retook his starting spot after that happened, and he didn't let it go.
Yeah.
Both of those players, switching back and forth, I think the Sounders would love to find the guy to be next to Gomez Andrade and get either more out of Arriaga or see that next step from Jackson Reagan, and whoever can do that to just lock down that spot in 2023, because I mean it's there. I think we're just waiting for one of those two guys to step up a little more.
Well, hopefully, I'm expecting and I'm hoping for big things for the Seattle Sounders in 2023. Jackson Feltz hosts the Sounders Weekly and the Sounders pregame and postgame show. Jackson, thank you so much for coming on, talking Sounders with me.
Thanks, Tom. Good to be here.
We are back, MLS Aces, with another team preview leading into the 2023 MLS season. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and joined with me for FC Cincinnati, I had to have 2 special guests on. I couldn't just have one like every other team. Nathan Hale, Stephen Buckeridge of the U8 Lion podcast, co-hosts. Guys, how are you? It's good to see both of you back and together. I don't know who wants to go first. You guys.
I'll let Stephen go first. The elder statesman, he can go first.
Well, you just went first, but so I'll go second. No, doing great, Tom. Thanks for having us on. Looking forward to chatting a little bit about the preview for FC Cincinnati. Even though, Nate's got his Wrexham shirt on, I did come wearing the colors, or at least the. But, looking forward to it, and it's good to see Nate. Nate, I haven't seen you in a couple months, so it's good to see you face.
Well, if you can come to a game on a regular basis or not travel the eastern hemisphere of the United States, it makes it a lot easier. But
Well, for anyone listening or watching this, clearly this is a little glimpse of what you can get on the U8 Lion podcast. Great podcast. I was just telling Stephen before, I enjoy it because I enjoy listening to you guys banter a little bit. That's what I get out of it, because I've talked to you guys. I know you guys a little bit, but the Cincinnati stuff, I don't really care about. But it's you guys. That's why I tune in as the co-host to the podcast. But guys, let's talk FC Cincinnati. Obviously, 2022, pretty damn good year for FC Cincinnati, right? You guys make the playoffs as the 5 seed. You guys go on a little bit of a run, losing to the Philadelphia Union in the conference semifinals. So far this offseason, it's been good. It's been interesting. It's been FC Cincinnati staying good, in my opinion. As far as departures, I wouldn't say a ton of really overly negative departures. Ronald Matarrita probably being the number 1 highlighted guy. He just signed for some team in Ukraine, so congrats to him and good luck in Europe. But Jeff Cameron, Alan Cruz, maybe some of the other names we can talk about, Calvin Harris as well. But as far as guys coming in, it's been a small list in its own right, but Marco Angulo, that one's exciting, maybe for the now, maybe for the future as well. Isaiah Foster coming in from Colorado Springs, I really like that. Some super draft picks. It's been a little quiet on the arrivals, but the Angulo pickup is huge. So Nathan, I'm going to start with you, since you wanted to start introducing yourself. This offseason, what do you give it as? It doesn't have to be a specific grade. Are you feeling good about it? Are you feeling negative about it? What are you just feeling overall about what Pat Noonan and the front office has done?
It's the Albright slow but steady. Something we learned about Albright last year is he's very quiet. He keeps things under wraps until the Angulo thing came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It took us about a month before he was officially signed, but that was a solid get for those that don't know the player. 20 years old, maybe 21 now. I don't know if he's had a birthday, but borderline Ecuadorian national team, a team that was in the World Cup. Very talented, very highly rated guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about a shuttler or a box-to-box to pair with Obi in the midfield, Obi Wobodo. For those that don't know, we'll know by the end of this season. I can promise you that. But just a really good get. That's kind of my biggest thing. From an additional aspect, bringing in, we need more defensive help. I mean, we let a lot of experience go in Jeff Cameron. Matarrita, even though he was injured for the majority of last year. Mark Anthony K still has me blocked on Twitter because of that tackle that took him out in a international friendly, and Mata wasn't a fan either, so I'll say that much. But we're gonna miss Mata, even though we really didn't have him a lot last year. Barrial stepped up, and Steven can kind of hit on formational changes if and when. But those are kind of my big pieces so far. We need some more depth on that back line.
And Steven, I'll turn it to you. I guess anything else or anything to add to what Nathan said about the offseason so far?
Yeah, just kind of echo a couple things. I mean, looking at the guys that we've signed, they probably all of them equal my age, right? So if you look at these 5 or 6 guys, they're all young guys, homegrown products. Angulo, 20 years old. Yeah, they all may meet my age. But to Nate's point, it's great to see the high upside young guys coming in. We're still missing a couple defensive pieces. We still need a center back. You know, the left back with Matarrita going over to Ukraine and us not bringing him back. We then lost Johnny Nelson in the expansion draft to St. Louis. Yes, in our 3-back setup, you know, Barrial was doing great or fine at left wing back, but our left back now is Isaiah Foster. So we need a center back and we need a left back. So we're all kind of waiting for that next announcement. And as Nate mentioned, the Chris Albright days are pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Things very tightly close to the vest, so there's not a lot of rumors. And we're just waiting for, you know, Tommy Scoops or Tommy Aces to kind of break the next FC Cincinnati signing.
You guys are talking about a quiet GM. I'm an NYCFC fan. Okay, we don't hear anything until 2 days before the season starts. So I'll start with that.
You hear departures.
Yeah, that's all we hear is.
There's the departures board and the arrivals. So that departures board is.
We're watching Man City signings and hoping we get a loan. That's what we're watching.
You're now a Girona fan, right?
Yeah, yeah, please, not with Toppy. Please. Okay, so let's go into 2023, and Steven, I'll start with you because I think for me right now, if there's any question mark on this roster that's outside of center back depth, like I think you guys touched on that well, maybe outside of some wing back help, is the big question mark around Brenner, your star striker from last year. Well, you have 2 star strikers, but one of your 2 star strikers from last year. There's, you know, reports from Tom Bogert that Udinese in the Serie A are interested in him. There's reports he's not going to be at Cincinnati for a full season. So, Steven, I'll start with you. What's your take on the Brenner situation? Do you think he'll be around for a season? Do you think the team should sell him if the right offer comes in during the summer, or I guess even now?
Yeah, with Brenner, we know he wanted to leave last year. They had an offer, you know, coming out of South America. Apparently, he wants to be in Europe instead. Mm-hmm. Our understanding is that you know, Albright and the team has said yes, we will support you and want to help you in your next move, but there's got to be a certain target amount that's received. Obviously, we paid $13 million. There's a couple additional million, maybe incentives. So they got $15 million in on him. The Udinese offer, I take that as Brenner's team trying to have the market come around because there's not much time left in the European window. Mm-hmm. Right? It closes 1 week from today. Mm-hmm. And, you know, basically the team has given Brenner's team, you know, hey, you've got until the end of this window to produce an offer. Otherwise, he's obviously here until the summertime. So my best take here, I guess most current take is that we will not see an offer in the next week that hits the mark that we need, the watershed mark, and we'll have Brenner at least for the first half of the season. If he repeats the performance, the production that we saw at the second half of last season, he will definitely be out of here come summer.
And I mean, I think that's the hopes maybe for the FC Cincinnati front office, the expectations for the front office. And Nathan, I'll toss it to you to add anything else you want on Brenner. And also, I forgot about, I guess, a decent question mark around Luciano Acosta, his contract and the Partizan deal, which I think is all bullshit, but whatever.
It is.
You dive into it.
I'll kind of piggyback on what Steven said. I'll agree. Initially, I was more sold, kind of as Tommy Scoops was, that he'll be gone this window.
Mm-hmm.
But as Steven said, there's a target to hit, and I don't think Udinese, really any teams really hit that. I think everybody's still trying to buy on the cheap. Yeah. And that's motivation for Brenner. Hey, man, you want to go to Europe? The window's open. The door's open. You can go, but you're going to have to generate a $15 million offer, essentially. We don't know what that number actually is. Maybe it's 11, maybe it's 12, whatever, but some kind of return on investment versus taking a loss, because we see the upside. We see the skill set. You're still very young. You're a poacher, and we saw what you could do the second half of last year. So I agree with Steven. I think if he comes out on a tear, which I'm all for, puts us in a good spot in the East to start the year. And then that gives Albright a little bit of time, a little additional time to have plan 1C, with Brenner and Vasquez being A and B. The Lucho thing, man, we've talked about this at length as a group. Me, Steven, and Adam's also on the pod, the You Ain't Lying pod with us. We talk about this stuff all the time. The Lucho thing, man, you look at his age, he's very happy in Cincy. I will say that. Those close to the club and close to the player and family, we all know Lucho is very happy in Cincy. He's very welcomed. He's, an icon as much as one can be with FC Cincinnati at this point. But you also look at the guy, in terms of his age, he's 28, 29. This is really his last opportunity to get one more big contract, get paid. Europe, sure, it was a dream. The PSG stuff, when he was with DC United, we saw how that played out. Very disappointing from a Lucho standpoint. It's tough. But then he went to Liga MX and didn't really get any run. And then he's back in MLS, and we paid a little bit to get him here. I could see the club saying, all right, man, like you've got, 1 year left on your deal. Let's do a 2+1 kind of deal. We'll bump your salary, 500, $1 million, whatever, depending on what his team wants. But the whole, another team making an offer for him, I mean, per FIFA guidelines, that actually can't happen. Like nobody gave permission to speak to the player. Yeah. So we think it's a little bit of that, and then I'll let Steven kind of hit on the fact with Lucho. He was over in Qatar for the World Cup. He was with his Argentinian boys, and that's got to be tough for him because a lot of those guys that he's close with, I mean, that's the biggest stage, and a lot of those guys are getting these additional contracts, these transfer rumors. So Steven kind of brought that up, but I'll let him hit on that a little bit if he wants to. And that's kind of my take on Lucho, but I think he'll be here. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah, no, and Steven, I'm interested in hearing in that because I have an opinion, but I want to hear the full story first, I think.
I was going to ask you your opinion first. No, it's contract year for Lucho, right? And so he goes over to Qatar and he hangs out with his Argentinian boys, sees them win the World Cup. When you're over there, you're creme de la creme. You're at the top notch of all world soccer, and I'm sure it was a kind of a pull at the heartstrings a little bit. Like he's doing great with FC Cincinnati. He's gotten us over the hump and no longer winning spoons. But as Nate referred to, that PSG thing still hurts. He was that close from joining PSG 3 years ago, and then he goes back over to Qatar and sees his boys win the World Cup. I'm sure there's a part of him that's like, I know I got it in me. I know I got it in me.
Yeah.
And so whether he's very happy in Cincinnati, yes, but this could be his last big contract. And whether he thinks he can make a splash in Europe or not, we don't know. Nate said it. He's very happy. The kids are happy. Everyone's happy here in Cincinnati. But he's got leverage right now from a player perspective. And we know that it's not maybe directly his agent, like the partisan thing, or today there was another tweet about his agent talking to, clubs back down in Brazil. I'm not sure it's his agent or his people around him that are kind of letting it know that, the window's open for him. Right. And so part of it is, hey, if you're a world football and you're going in the last year of your contract, you want to see some action. You want to see something moving. And so I do know that his team has been trying to get the club to we're going to talk about a re-up, talk about what's next. And it's just not Albright's need to do that right now. And so there's a little bit different of a timing perspective between what the club needs and what Lucho's looking for. And time will tell, but I mean, who knows if the heartstrings got pulled enough on Lucho and Qatar to say, hey, I want to be part of the mucky mucks over in Europe.
Yeah,
or if this is just agent talk, right?
Yeah, true. But I also mean right, like maybe he's looking for that one last payday because of his production in MLS last season too. On top of being hanging out with the Argentinian national team and all of that, right? Because he was the lead creation. I think he led all key passes in MLS, right? He led assists, all that stuff. Like, so he deserves the payday for his MLS production too. And I understand the PSG stuff years ago. I don't think that was ever going through, to be completely honest. I don't know. You guys probably know more insider stuff than me when it comes to the internal conversations, but I never saw Lucho Acosta at a PSG level. Sorry to say it. I don't think he's that good. I think he's very good in MLS terms, but I don't think he's PSG good. But whatever. This isn't
Tom, here's the question. So I'm going to ask you, if you were Chris Albright, if you were the GM of FC Cincinnati, and he's on the last year of his contract, he's making $2.25 million now.
Mm-hmm.
What's his value? If you do a new 2+1 contract, what salary are you offering Lucho? That's the question we've been asking ourselves, because we know Albright's got a number, and we know that Lucho's team wants something different. What's his value?
I don't know a specific number, but I'm pretty 99% sure he's not a DP, right? Lucho's not a DP.
He is.
Yes.
Okay, my mistake. I don't have that, and I'm just missing that. But $2.5 million, give him another. I don't know. I feel like you can bump him up to like $3.5-4 million a year over the next 2 years, and then give him a club option for a third year. He's 28. I don't know. I'm not great with contracts. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a GM genius here, but I don't know. Like roughly double the salary.
The weird dynamic with it is we, to this day, we don't have a backup for Lucho. When he was out, he got some card suspension last year. We don't have a true backup 10, and we saw how well that trio of Brenner, Lucho, and Vasquez can create. I mean, they dominate him, and they're if they're not the league best, they're the second best.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing that does give Lucho a little bit of credential, a little bit of staying power in the sense, hey, if I leave, who's taking my spot? And that's on Albright as a GM. That's a question we ask ourselves as fans. Is like, there's been this glaring hole that when Lucho's out, who's our creative 10? And
even in the sense of like Udinese and teams are interested in Brenner. So I would rather have Lucho and Brandon Vasquez than no Lucho, no Brenner, and just Brandon Vasquez. Like,
it's
what I'm saying? Like, I would rather have two of the three rather than one of the three if I have to pay one of those three a little bit more money to stick with me out the rest of his career, or a majority of whatever is left of his career. Yeah. So I think they should pay the man. I just don't know if it's going to be at a number that his team wants. I don't know what that number is, but I think you could increase his salary another $1 million or $2 million, $1.5 million, and I don't think that would upset me at all if I'm FC Cincinnati's front office or a fan or anything like that. Because without Lucho, Vasquez and Brenner aren't creating for themselves at the end of the day.
Absolutely. You're absolutely spot on there. They got their goals because of Lucho.
And the space he creates and the space he takes up on the field. But this has turned into a Lucho. I mean, we can talk about Lucho and that's being FC Cincinnati, but I want to dive in on the defense a little bit, right? Because the back three was a nice, I don't know, not that you guys didn't have the back three before, but it was a nice revelation last year with how it was played underneath Pat Newton, I think. Nick Hagglund, Matt Miazga, Ian Murphy, as of right now, looks to be that starting back three with Miazga sitting in the middle. Obviously, Roman Celentano coming in on that Generation Adidas deal last year and looking like an absolute stud in net year one as a rookie. You hit a home run on a goalkeeper, which teams want to do. And Nathan, I'll start with you, I guess. What do you make of the defense with that back three? Roman, obviously, you mentioned before, Obi sitting in front of them, like pretty solid defense, if you ask me, with that killer attack up front.
It's solid, but the thing that we've discussed, and I keep referencing that because we talk about this stuff until we're blue in the face, orange and blue in the face, if you will. Yeah. We lost a lot of leadership with Jeff Cameron. Even though he wasn't going to give you, all the matches or 90 minutes every match, ton of experience, and he's a true leader. A lot of the players, Ian Murphy will credit him for a lot of his growth last year as a rookie. And that's the big part, man. You're talking about a rookie, a second-year center back in the league who gained a ton of unexpected experience and showed very well for what it's worth. And then Hagelin had a career year. We cannot question that. Hags had a career year. Can he replicate that? Can he do that again? These are some huge question marks. If Hags regresses even a little bit back to the what he was before,
yes.
Or if you have a sophomore slump with Ian Murphy, okay. And then, not that I'm worried about Miazga's health, but he had some off-season surgery to repair a nerve issue. Nothing major, but what if one of those guys picks up a knock or is out of form? Especially on that left side, assuming Ian Murphy's our left center back and Barrial's your left wing back, that's a lot of inexperience, if you will. And if Miazga's out, sure, Hags can do a job, but man, we're one oops away from a headache, and it completely changes. So that's kind of my take. That's why we need some more depth and maybe another starter.
No, for sure. And Steven, I'll let you dive in on the defense if that's something that you want to talk about, or the midfield. I'm going to let you go with whatever else on this team that you want to talk about. Cincinnati, you go for it.
Well, I just kind of piggyback off of Nate. And what happened is last year, if you recall, our first game was at Austin, and we got shellacked, 5-0 whitewashing. It was awful. But we tried the 4-4-2. We tried to do a diamond 4-1. We like to refer to it as a 4-1-2-1-2. But we do know that Albright and Noonan eventually want to move towards that 4-4-2 diamond approach. And they started the season, opened the season that way, even though we did know in the background last preseason they had been playing around with the 3-back set. So they did have to go to the 3 center back set to make it. They just didn't have the talent, didn't have the roster.
Yeah, to make it work.
Right. So now, Angulo coming in, having Obi, as that kind of main 6, and Angulo coming in, you're starting to build some of the midfield that would allow that transformation, or at least the versatility to run out of 4-4-2 available. But we don't have the defense still to do that. We don't have 2 strong center backs that we could have in a diamond 4. We don't have a left back to be able to handle that in a diamond 4, because again, Barrial is a left wing back at best. He's a left winger converted to left wing back, right? So right now we're kind of stuck in that we don't have all the pieces to be able to be versatile and run out that 4-4-2 diamond. So it is okay if we got Miazga, who's coming back from surgery. He's training at the side with the ball, but not back to team training. They're down in Florida now. It's only 4 weeks to the first game. You got young Ian Murphy. You got Nicky Hags, as Nathan said, coming back off a career year. Can he replicate it? We're short.
Yeah.
We're short whether we do a 3-back approach or whether we do a 4-4-2 diamond.
Yeah.
Our midfield is starting to transform, but we don't have the backline pieces that are going to be able to have that versatility quite yet.
Well, like you guys said, stuff under Pat Noonan and Chris Albright stays quiet until you get the announcement. So, maybe move in silence. That's maybe the Cincinnati way.
And there was a press conference today, but it's silent. I mean, there's silence. Yeah. It's still silence.
That's one thing this league's. I mean, to get off not on a quite tangent, but this league's got to get better about making a lot of this stuff publicized. Yeah. It's just we're a few steps away from really generating the diehard fans and even the casuals to get full access, if you will.
I mean, totally fair. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but what we could. I guess I'll leave it at this, guys. Is there anything that I didn't touch heading into 2023 that you guys feel like, for anyone who's a casual fan, anyone who may know zero about FC Cincinnati, you feel like you should let the world know here?
I would say we were one of the most electric, fun teams to watch last season.
Fair.
And that will continue because of our attacking 3. Again, I don't see Brenner going in the next week. Our attacking 3 is arguably the best attacking 3 out there. Our defense is not quite solidified. So you could see some good 3-3, 4-4 games. Remember that when New York City came to town?
Yeah.
You can see a lot of those type games. When we play Montreal, it's always kind of a 5-4, 4-4 game. We may see some high-scoring affair out of the gate for FC Cincinnati. So if you're a casual, you like scoring, you like to see some action, Yeah, check us out.
You like touchdowns, you know where to go. Nathan, any last word for you, buddy?
That's really it, man. It's just really the first year we're coming into it as a team with some stability. Every year has been a new head coach, arguably a new GM, with some turmoil, and this is the first year where we really have some stability. We've gained some more experience. We haven't mentioned Santiago Arias, who we're bringing in. He's a trialist, but we all expect him to sign. A guy that Champions League experience, was a regular starter with Atletico Madrid. So fits a 4-4-2 diamond much better than a 3-back system. So again, we're kind of inching that way, but that's the main thing. And the team's fun. You've got a lot of diehard fans. Nobody likes us, and that's okay, as a saying that we use. We like to run our mouths, even though the past few years until last year we really didn't have the ground to do so, but we at least try. So the door's always open. I would say that as a fan, and as somebody that wants to become a fan of MLS or pick a team, come on aboard. It's a good time to get on.
You guys never run your mouths, never. But I love you guys no matter what. Guys, go follow the You Ain't Lying podcast. Go listen. It's enjoyable content, even if you're not an FC Cincinnati fan. I will always say that. Nathan, Steven, thank you guys so much. And we'll definitely have you guys back on during the season.
Sounds good.
Cheers,
Thanks,
buddy.
Tom. Prost.
MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. We're back with another team preview heading into the 2023 season. And right now we're talking Portland Timbers. And with me right now, I have Sam Svilar from Stumptown Footy. Sam, how are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Doing good.
Good. Well, we're here talking Portland. Like we just said a few moments ago off recording, Portland soccer is it's a unique place. It's a fun place. It's always something to talk about, whether it's good or bad. But obviously, I think 2022, the last season, was a little bit of maybe an odd down year for Portland. Obviously, you guys just missing the playoffs in that 8 seed, 46 points. And, mixed bag of results under Gio Savarese and everything. Now you guys head into 2023. Evander coming in, right? That's always fun. But some maybe lower end roster guys exiting the team as well. So just strictly, I guess, from an off-season transaction point of view, how are you making the Gio Savarese off-season, and obviously what the front office is doing as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can start with the names coming in. It's Evander, like that's the big name coming in. That's a record transfer fee for the Timbers. Never paid as much for that player before. Designated player, like kind of the new prototypical designated player, you could argue, for MLS. South American, entering his prime, talented, already has some experience. It's interesting to see a player coming over like from Europe, like from that experience of the Timbers. They've never really done that in their with a lot of kind of like their bigger name kind of DP signings. He's really kind of going to be looked at as the guy, I think, this year. The Timbers, for honestly about 2.5 seasons now, have really kind of been missing that pure creative midfielder. Diego Valeri was it back in the day. During his tail end years, he was more of just kind of an attacker. Usually, it honestly lined up more as a second forward in his final couple of seasons with Portland. So they really never had that like strong creative presence. Sebastian Blanco kind of did it in spells, but he was inconsistent in 2022 and a little bit in 2021 until he returned from injury, until he fully recovered. So Evander's kind of been brought in to be that guy, to be kind of like that fulcrum kind of in the middle of the field. And if in those names you kind of mentioned, if that's the only name that you can recall them bringing in, it's because you're right. The Timbers really haven't made a ton of moves this offseason so far. Evander's a big one, and he could wind up being a very integral piece if he can settle into the league quickly, if he can, start to add in goals and assists. Other than that, they haven't brought in any other players. Like you said, there've been a few guys at the fringes that have kind of either had their contracts declined or, options weren't picked up. They're starting right back from last season. Jose Carlos Van Rankin, he's now gone. So this Timbers roster is basically just the 2022 Timbers roster plus Evander. And the 2022 Timbers roster was very similar to the 2021 Timbers roster. So you could argue that this team is by and large more or less roughly the same as it was for the past 3 years. Like I can understand what I say.
Maybe the only other, if you want to call them additions, are a healthy Felipe Mora, a healthy Yaroslav Niezgoda, right? Like guys like that who are gonna hopefully, knock on wood, be there for an entire season, right? So you're adding two healthy strikers back into the picture too with an Evander. And look, you take a team that was just below the playoff line in the Western Conference, a team that I would far call from a bad team, but a team that had its good spells, had its bad spells. Now you add a potential, I don't know, guy, a 10 who can compete with the best of 10s in the league, a Lucho Acosta, Lucas Zelarayan, guys like that. And he's in his prime, and you get him used to MLS, and he's dishing it out to a Jimmy Chara, Santiago Moreno, a Felipe Mora, a Niezgoda, whatever it may be. Maybe Portland then jumps from 8th to, clearly well into the playoff picture. And I think that's, if I'm picking that up correctly, that's what Portland's kind of hoping for.
Yeah, definitely. I think 2022 was an outlier it was the first season they missed the playoffs under Savarese. When Gio came in 2018, right? Obviously a little bit of a shock hire after Caleb Porter unexpectedly stepped away. He came out of the gates on fire, guiding Portland to MLS Cup final appearance in 2018. And they've been, well, I think you mentioned Portland's had a few ups, a few downs. They've been a little inconsistent, but they have always made the playoffs. That's, I think, what makes 2022 feel like more of an outlier. Like you said, a lot of it was injury related, right? They didn't have a healthy Eric Williamson for most of the year. They didn't really have a fully healthy Sebastian Blanco for most of the year. The biggest kind of factor in them missing the playoffs, which you kind of mentioned, was the striker situation or the lack of production from the striker spot. Niezgoda fought some injuries. Mora, he never really got a chance to get onto the field, kind of like you said, after sustaining an injury at the tail end of 2021. So, that was, I think, the biggest Achilles heel for the Timbers in 2022 was they just couldn't score goals. They couldn't create enough consistent pressure. And so you see them go out and directly address that with getting Evander. I think what you just described is Evander elevates the midfield. Everybody's healthy. This roster is still a playoff roster, is essentially the bet that Portland is making with Savarese, a new general manager, and Grabovoy. What they're basically saying is that our roster is still good enough. We just need to add a few more pieces. Obviously, Evander is a big piece, but everyone else around him is good enough for us to get into the playoffs. And for the Timbers, that's proven to be a pretty good ethos. More often than not, if they make the playoffs, they're probably going to go on a run. 2019 and 2020 notwithstanding, but I think that's generally kind of the attitude that they're taking into the new year.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? And I really feel like Portland's in a win now mode, right? Because you are getting maybe the later years now of a Seba Blanco, Jimmy Chara not getting any younger, Evander coming in his prime. You have center backs and Amabiala, Zuparic, who they're still good players in their own right, but again, not getting any younger on that opposite side of 30. And you do have players playing really well. One of these pieces to me, though, that is a question mark, and I think maybe the second biggest storyline outside of Evander is Eric Williamson. You mentioned him. He's playing. I'll tell the listeners and the viewers, it's January 25th. We're recording during the U.S. men's national team game. He's called up into this camp, right? Eric Williamson, there's rumors he's being traded. There's rumors he's not. What's your take on the Williamson situation underneath Savarese?
I mean, for now, he's still wearing green and gold. He played he played in a preseason game for Portland last weekend. Played 30 minutes. It sounds like everything's good. I mean, like you said, he's with January camp right now, so I don't know exactly what's going on with him. I think he's still on the bench right now. Hudson didn't start him, but whatever, we'll leave that aside. He's saving him for the game against Colombia because he's going to be playing a couple of his teammates. He'll be perfect. He's playing Juan Mosquera and Santiago Moreno. That was one of the things that I expected to be the biggest storyline going into the offseason. Williamson, for whatever reason or not, did not play in that last Timbers game, a essential win or go home, basically playoff, like play-in game, essentially against Real Salt Lake, which Portland lost pretty handily. And we still don't know the full story of what exactly happened between Eric Williamson and Giovanni Savarese. There were liked Instagram posts and like tweets and some drama and everything was going on. And yes, like you said, there was rumblings of Portland potentially trading him. I think Portland tested the market. I think my read of it is they took a look and see what can we get from him. Is it worth it? Can we do something with this money? because like you said, I also agree that Portland is viewing themselves in win now mode. They're trying to keep that championship window, just pry it open for maybe just 1 or 2 more seasons. And if they couldn't get a good return for Williamson, they weren't going to deal him. And I think that's probably what happened. Right now, looks like whatever happened between Williamson and Svilar is either in the past or isn't that big of a deal or has kind of been addressed, because like I said, Williamson is with the Timbers. He's training with them. They're featuring him in their promotion material. I don't think you do that with a player who's on their way out. There was recently a tweet, somebody tweeted at Eric Williamson. He came on Twitter. He just kind of said, hey, or just like, hi, basically, just like one tweet. And then a whole bunch of people responded to them, and he responded a bunch of them. And somebody tweeted at him thinking about a midfield between him, Evander, and Diego Chara. And he posted basically an excited GIF kind of in response. And so, again, a player doesn't post that if they're not envisioning kind of being in that Timbers midfield. Exactly. So for now, looks like Williamson is still at the Timbers. That could be subject to change, I think. As the season goes along, you never know, right? Like, no player in MLS is irreplaceable, right? Like, and you saw what the market can be for an extremely talented MLS player. We saw what happened with Paul Arriola, with his trade to Dallas. Sebastian Lletget, he's changed hands a couple of times. Every time, huge amount of allocation money heading the other way. I think the Timbers basically value Williamson as at that level, if not more, than the Lletget or maybe at your Paul Arriolas, which I think is entirely fair. Williamson is a supremely talented midfielder who I think makes everybody around him better. Portland's best moments in 2022 came when he was on the field doing his thing, orchestrating the midfield. So I think that'll be a storyline to watch going into 2023, is what happens with him, and in particular how we can coexist with Evander, because they tend to play that role a little bit similarly, that kind of attacking midfielder role. So some flexibility is going to have to be had by Svilar and how he deploys his midfield and how that kind of all shakes out.
I mean, it will be very exciting, right? Because there were moments when it was Chara, Williamson, and Valeri that I think the three of them just made such an incredible, beautifully kind of to watch midfield. Now you hope, at least for Portland fans, hoping that Evander, Williamson, and Chara can recreate that again. Let's talk about the rest of the team, right? We've talked about the strikers, we've talked about the midfield. Let's look at the winger core, right? Santiago Moreno, I think, is one of the bright young talents that we have in this league, especially on the wing, because wing talent really is harder to come by than you would think in Major League Soccer. I think over the past season or so, there's very good ones, but I think the ones to separate themselves, I feel like Santiago Moreno could take 2023 as a season to separate himself as one of the better wingers in the league. You obviously have guys like a Jimmy Chara, a Dairon Asprilla, who I think has to be a fan favorite in Portland. Talk to me about the winger play, the attacking play from the Portland Timbers.
Yeah, Dairon Asprilla has become that like cult hero for the Portland Timbers. He always kind of was. Everyone kind of loves him because he's the type of player that will just try the one thing where it's like, why did you do that every game? Never kind of do it. And then miraculously in 2021, they all started hitting. It's like, why did you? Oh, that's why. He's scoring bicycle kicks. He's doing flips, everything. It was great. So yeah, I think he's still being around, I think, is huge, because he's now grown into kind of like more of a like senior veteran for the Timbers, which is not how he came in to Portland. He definitely started as kind of like a younger, or kind of a little more immature talent, I guess, to use a word, but he's definitely grown to kind of like that elder statesman, and he's no doubt helped players like Santiago Moreno, like you said, kind of become integrated more with the team. I'm glad you brought him up, because I think, like you said, if there's any one person on this Timbers team that is poised to kind of make a leap, it is Moreno. He had an exciting 2021. He came in mid-season. He only had a few games. You could see how talented he was. 2022 was his first full year as a starter. He had his ups and downs as a young player. That's going to happen. Going into 2023, I think he is going to be almost kind of like the bellwether for the Timbers. If he is playing really well, if he is kind of being that game-breaking second or third option for Portland, coming attacking on the wing, like you said, that's huge. Like, that gives their attack a different dimension. It makes it more dangerous. It makes it more exciting. He can, almost score a goal all on his own. He can beat players on the dribble. He loves to do that. He loves to drive at the ball. I think he's a player that, is poised to kind of a big season. He, like I said, he just got called into the Colombian national team camp. I know it's January, and I know these rosters are kind of mismatched with things, but that does a lot for a player's confidence. Yeah, exactly. So I think, he's going to be looked at to be a starter this year. Like you said, Jimmy Chara, he's still with the team as well. He's kind of been a somewhat divisive figure with Portland fans for how they view him and whether they view that he is worth his price tag, worth his designated player status. Regardless, he's shown up. He's been one of the most consistent Timbers players. I think he played in literally every single game last year. He was probably the most consistent player for the Timbers, in sense of showing up and putting in the shift. Probably won't win you games on his own, but he can still do a good job. So that winger core from Portland, if they can show up, they're extremely talented. It all kind of stems around, can they get help, right? Evander will help. Having the forwards will help. How well they interact with overlapping fullbacks, like Severus likes to play. Those are all the things that Portland's going to have to really fire on and be successful with if they want to score goals this year.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And Sam, unfortunately, our time's coming to a close here, but I've been closing out all of these episodes with the same question, or I've been trying to do all these episodes with the same question of, is there a player, is there a storyline, is there something that I haven't asked you or we haven't talked about that you feel like if you were listening or watching this podcast, whatever this episode, whatever it may be, that you're like, okay, I'm glad that I knew that about Portland heading into the 2023 season?
Yeah, I think the storyline to watch is Aljaz Ivicic's campaign for MLS Goalkeeper of the Year. Aljaz Ivičić, Portland's goalkeeper, was a revelation last season. He came on and lit the league on fire. He was very solid. He was one of, I would say, the 5 best goalkeepers in the entire league.
Top 3 last year.
Yeah, he was up there. And he has a chip on his shoulder about the size of Oregon. He loves to prove people wrong. I think you're going to see him continue it this year. He can make those saves that make your eyebrows raise, make you stand up in your seat. He's going to basically win Portland games on his own, and they're going to need him to. So be on the lookout for him going into this year.
Okay, well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on, guys. Make sure you go follow Sam on social media. Sam, if you want to plug your social media, go for it, but also make sure you follow Stumptown Footy and support independent soccer coverage across the U.S. But Sam, go for it.
Yeah. You can follow me personally at Twitter on @Sammich, SAMMICH 923. Stumptown Footy, like I said, we're still running. I don't know if folks saw the news about the Vox media layoff, but Stumptown Footy was impacted, unfortunately. But we're putting together whatever's next, and we'll be sure to share whatever it is. But for now, you can check out Stumptown Footy, the site, to see what's coming and what we got cooking for what's coming next.
Well, support Stumptown Footy and then whatever is next as well. So make sure you stay tuned on social media. Support it all. Support everyone who's out there creating their independent content, unfortunately, with this SB Nation news. But Sam, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.